For Banned Book Week 2013, I will be analyzing and reading a small passage from The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Now, The Catcher in the Rye has been challenged and banned over the years because of the numerous complaints against it for offensive language, negative remarks to God, and encouragement of violence, being sexually explicit, and overall being unsuitable to the younger age groups. Holden Caulfield is represented as a poor role model by his encouragement of youth rebellion, smoking, drinking, and lying. And also we got to look at Mark David Chapman, the man who assassinated John Lennon, and John Hinckley Jr., who attempted to assassinate President Ronald Reagan, were both obsessed with The Catcher in the Rye. And what's the overall lasting value of this book? Now, The Catcher in the Rye is more of a coming-of-age tale involving Holden Caulfield, who is our main character. And Holden attempts to navigate the world from his own personal perspective, and at the same time attempts to define his own identity. Holden refuses to become part of the crowd and wants to experience and see the world for himself. And one has to remember that The Catcher in the Rye came out in 1951, right when the Red Scare and McCarthyism was running wild in the United States. And I personally feel that this book benefits the world of literature by creating that outcast character who wants to rebel and can be looked at in a positive manner because the reader can feel compassion for him. And at times we are all Holden Caulfields because we want to act or perform a task to our own personal preference. Now I'm going to read a small passage from The Catcher in the Rye. If you really want to hear about it, the first thing you'll probably want to know is where I was born, and what my lousy childhood was like, and how my parents were occupied, and all before they had me, and all that David Copperfield kind of crap. But I don't feel like going into it. You want to know the truth. In the first place, that stuff bores me. And in the second place, my parents would have about 2 hemorrhages apiece if they told anything pretty personal about them. They're quite touchy about anything like that, especially my father. They're all nice and all, and I'm not saying that, but they're all so touchy as hell. Besides, I'm not going to tell you my whole goddamn autobiography or anything. I just tell you about this Madame stuff that happened to me around last Christmas before I got pretty run down and had to come out here and take it easy. I mean, that's all I told DB about, and he's my brother-in-law. He's in Hollywood. This isn't too far from that crumbly place, and he comes over here and visits me practically every weekend. Oh, he's going to drive me home when I go home next month, maybe. He just got a Jaguar. One of those little English jobs that can do around 200 miles an hour. It costs him a damn near $4,000 bucks. He's got a lot of dough now. He didn't used to. He used to just be a regular writer when he was home. He wrote this terrific book of short stories, The Secret Goldfish, in case you never heard of him. The best one in it was The Secret Goldfish. It was about this little kid that wouldn't let anybody look at his goldfish because he bought it with his own money. It killed me. Now he's out in Hollywood, DB being a prostitute. If there's one thing I hate, it's the movies. Don't even mention them to me. Where I want to start telling is the day I left Pensy Prep. Pensy Prep is this school that's in Hagerstown, Pennsylvania. You've probably heard of it. You've probably seen the ads anyway. They advertise in about 1,000 magazines, always showing some hotshot guy on a horse jumping over a fence. Like, as if all you ever did at Pensy Prep was play polo all the time. I never even once saw a horse anywhere near the place. And underneath the guy on the horse's picture, it always says, "Since 1888, we have been molding boys into splendid, clear-thinking young men, strictly for the birds." They don't do that any damn more molding at Pensy than they do at any other school. And I don't know anybody that was splendid and clear-thinking at all. Maybe 2 guys, if that many. And they probably came to Pensy that way. Anyway, it was a Saturday of the football game with Saxon Hall. The game with Saxon Hall was supposed to be a very big deal around Pensy. It was the last game of the year, and they were supposed to commit suicide or something if old Pensy didn't win. I remember around 3 o'clock that afternoon, I was standing way the hell on top of Thompson Hill, right next to this crazy cannon that was in the Revolutionary War and all. You could see the whole field from there, and you could see the 2 teams bashing each other all over the place. You couldn't see the grandstand too hot, but you could hear them all, yelling, deep, and terrific on the Pensy side, because practically the whole school except me was there. And the scrawny and faggy on Saxy Hall's side, because the visiting team hardly ever brought many people with them. There were never many girls at the football games. Only seniors were allowed to bring girls with them. It was a terrible school, no matter how you looked at it. I like to be somewhere at least where you can see a few girls around once in a while, even if they're only scratching their arms or blowing their noses, or even just giggling or something. Old Selena Thurmer, she was quite the headmaster's daughter, showed up at the games quite often, but she exactly wasn't the type that drove you mad with desire. She was a pretty nice girl, though. I sat next to her once in the bus from Hagerstown. We sort of struck up a conversation. I liked her. She had a big nose and her nails were all bent down and bleedy looking, and she had those damn falsies that point all over the place. But you sort of felt sorry for her. What I liked about her, she didn't give you a lot of horse manure about what a great guy her father was. She probably knew what a phony slob he was. The reason I was standing way up on Thompson Hill instead of down at the game was because I just got back from New York with a fencing team. I was the goddamn manager of the fencing team. Very big deal. We'd gone into New York that morning for this fencing meet with McBurney's school, only we didn't have the meet. I left all the foils and equipment and stuff on the goddamn subway. It wasn't my fault. I had to keep getting up to look at this map so we know where we get off at. So when we got back to Pensy around 2:30 instead of around dinner time, the whole team ostracized me the whole way back on the train. It was pretty funny in a way. The other reason I wasn't down at the game was because I was on my way to say goodbye to old Spencer, my history teacher. He had the grippy, and I figured I probably wouldn't see him again until Christmas vacation started. He wrote me this note saying he wanted to see me before I went home, and he knew I wasn't coming back to Pensy. I forgot to tell you about that. They kicked me out. I wasn't supposed to come back after Christmas vacation, on account of I was flunking 4 subjects and not applying myself at all. They gave me frequent warnings to start applying myself, especially around midterms. My parents came up for a conference with old Thurmer, but I didn't do it. So I got the X. They give guys the X frequently at Pensy, and it's a very good academic rating. Pensy, it really does. Anyway, it was December and all, and it was cold as a witch's teat, especially on top of that stupid hill. I only had my hand on my reversible and no gloves or anything. The week before that, someone stole my camel's hair coat right out of my room, with my fur-lined gloves right in the pocket and all. Pensy was full of crooks. Quite a few guys came from these very wealthy families, but it was full of crooks anyway. The more expensive a school is, the more crooks it has, I'm not kidding. Anyway, I kept standing next to this crazy candidate looking down at the game and freezing my ass off. Only I wasn't watching the game too much. What I was really hanging around for, I was trying to feel some kind of a goodbye. I mean, I've left schools and places I didn't even know, and I was leaving them. I hate them. I don't care if it's a sad goodbye or a bad goodbye, but when I leave a place, I like to know I'm leaving it. And if you don't, you feel even worse. So that just gives you a little perspective of Holden Caulfield and kind of how he views the world and what his overall attitude of the world is. And it's interesting as the novel goes on, he involves himself in mischief and things that appease to him and it may not appease to us. But he's overall he's a good protagonist, even though he's a little bit of a rebel. And I think the literature world is better off having him here.